The 2024 NFL Draft was viewed as one of the better draft classes over the past several years, and we've already seen several players from this class prove their teams right. Whether it be Brock Bowers for the Raiders, Brian Thomas Jr. for the Jags, Jared Verse from the Rams, Quinyon Mitchell from the Eagles, or, of course, not just one, but several quarterbacks from this draft class. Anytime quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3 in an NFL draft, it almost never works out for all three teams, and a couple of years later, we are left discussing what went wrong for multiple NFL teams as they continue to look for their franchise signal caller. And for reference, look no further than 2021 as the first three quarterbacks selected were Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, and Trey Lance. As we know, only one of those quarterbacks is still with the team that selected them, and even the other two quarterbacks that were selected in the first round in Justin Fields and Mac Jones are no longer with their original team either. But we are a couple of months into the 2024 season, and the 2024 quarterback class is off to a very hot start. And when you look at what each player is doing, especially with the lack of supporting cast in some cases, it's hard not to buy into this entire class. And I think there's a very real chance we have an insane quarterback class on our hands. And in today's video, we're going to break down the 2024 quarterback class a couple of months into their careers. And if they're going to have continued success, they're eventually going to have to play well in January. And with the cold officially here, it's definitely football season. And I don't know about you guys, but as soon as I get home for the day and as soon as I have no more responsibilities to go back out, I put my comfy clothes on, and that includes the Perfect Jean. And I know you may be thinking, yeah, right, but the Perfect Jeans are super soft, stretchy, and comfortable, and they are without a doubt the most comfortable pair of jeans I've ever owned. The Perfect Jean has an option for everybody. They have 6 different styles, their waists range from 26 to 50 inches, and their lengths range from 26 to 38 inches. So if you are the size of Deuce Vaughn or Joe Alt or somewhere in between, trust me, the Perfect Jean has an option for you. Now, to give you an idea of how flexible and comfortable these jeans are, I'm actually wearing them right now, and you can see really the type of flexibility and comfort when wearing the Perfect Jean, and it's time to stop wearing uncomfortable jeans and stop crushing your balls while wearing those uncomfortable jeans, and to head on over to the Perfect Jean, where you get 15% off your first order using code analysis15, where there's also free shipping, exchanges, and returns, so you have complete peace of mind when ordering from the Perfect Jean, and given that we are in the month of November, it's also a pretty good holiday gift. That's 15% off for new customers at the Perfect Jean. Again, a tremendous amount of flexibility when you wear the Perfect Jean, and after you check out, they will ask where you heard about them, so please consider supporting the show, and that's code analysis15 at the Perfect Jean, and a big thank you to the Perfect Jean for sponsoring today's video. And we are starting today's video with Commanders quarterback Jayden Daniels. We will get to Caleb Williams in a minute, but the impact Jayden Daniels has had on the Commanders franchise since being selected number 2 overall back in April is nothing short of sensational. I know the last couple of weeks have been rough, and there are a lot of Commanders fans that cannot wait for the Week 14 bye to finally give the team some rest and to give Jayden Daniels a much needed break. But even with the last 2 games factored in, which were losses to the Steelers and Eagles, Washington is still 4th in points per game on the year, as they are averaging 28 per contest, and a lot of that is obviously due to Jayden. They have 3 games with 38 or more points, and we of course all remember the Monday night game against the Bengals, as that was a very good game, and it was in a game where Jayden led the Commanders to an improbable victory. Obviously, we didn't know how bad the Bengals defense would be throughout the 2024 season, but even knowing what we know now, having a rookie quarterback in his 3rd career start go into the jungle and win in a game where the Commanders did not punt the football and in a game where he completed over 90% of his passes was unreal. And that was the start of a span of 3 games where the Commanders would have 34 plus points, which also included a 42-14 beatdown of the Arizona Cardinals out in Arizona in Week 4. We are at a point where people are calling the Commanders frauds and not thinking they are for real, as they have now lost back-to-back games to playoff teams, but I would counter with this. Did you think heading into the season that the Commanders would be 7-2 through 9 games, and that they would look anywhere close to as good as they have through the first 9 games? And the overwhelming answer would probably be no. And as a resident in Maryland who has closely watched this team for my entire life, Washington even having the chance to be called frauds is a huge step in the right direction because of how bad they've been for the past 20 years outside of a year here or there. My one concern with Jayden doesn't really pertain to him specifically, but I do have concerns with offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury, and Cardinals fans have voiced these concerns recently to me, and I completely understand where they're coming from. There's concern that Cliff gets figured out midway through the year, and I was very frustrated with how he used wide receiver Terry McLaurin, specifically against the Eagles, as I didn't think he put him in a position to succeed against the Eagles in Week 11. He refused to move him around, and the lack of weapons the Commanders have showed in a big way. But for Jayden specifically, I love what I've seen from him, and like everyone, I think his future is very bright. I also think it's worth noting that Jayden is making it happen with what is a not great receiving core. His top 4 receivers are Terry McLaurin, who is of course a really good player, and it's more so the next 3 names: a 34-year-old Zach Ertz, Noah Brown, who is now on his 3rd different team in 3 years, and of course Austin Eckler. I would imagine this is going to be the worst supporting cast we ever see put around Jayden Daniels, and he's played excellent through the first several games in his career. Drake May for the Patriots is up, and out of any of the quarterbacks in today's video, I think I was wrong on my preseason assessment of Drake May for a couple of reasons. Not the pre-draft assessment, because I really like Drake May and I had him as my 6th best player in the class, but I really thought the best thing for Drake May and the Patriots was for Drake to sit out most of his rookie year and for him to sit back and learn, and my thought process was, well, there's not a great offensive line, the receiving core is also pretty bad, and I thought there was a real chance that if Drake May played the majority of his rookie year, that there was a chance to do inevitable damage, kind of like we saw with Bryce Young during the 2023 season, although Bryce has picked it up recently, and I do want that to be noted, but I thought that could have happened with Drake May, and when your offensive line is not great to begin with, and at this point when your offensive line is led by Vidarian Lowe, Michael Jordan, Ben Brown, Mike Nwenu, and Demontre Jacobs, that's not an offensive line where you are being set up for success, and of course Jake Andrews is out right now with an injury, but the point is, the offensive line for the Patriots was a real hindrance to Drake May, at least it had the potential to be, and we've seen that when Drake May has played through the first several starts of his career. Now, one thing that I think is really impressive with Drake May is he is currently on pace for a 3,000 passing yard, 22 passing touchdown season, and he's been a really good runner so far as well, and he would be on pace for over 630 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. Now, one thing that I do want to be noted within that 3,600 total yard projection is that is based on the 7 games he's played. He came in late in the Jets game early in the year on Thursday night, and then he also left a game earlier this year due to a concussion, and even within that game that he left due to a concussion, he was just 3 of 6 passing, and 2 of the 3 incompletions were drops. And that was kind of my fear for Drake entering 2024, but with the flashes we've seen, I have no doubt that Drake will be a good quarterback in the NFL for a long time. One of the biggest reasons that I'm so sold on Drake May this early in his career is his supporting cast is what you would hope is by far the worst in his entire career. As a 22-year-old rookie, his top 6 receivers are Hunter Henry, Demario Douglas, Kayshon Boutte, Austin Hooper, Kendrick Bourne, and Antonio Gibson. And the Patriots have over $130 million in cap space available right now in the 2025 offseason, and that's per over the cap, and also per over the cap, if they designate Kendrick Bourne as a post-June 1st cut, they can free up an additional $6.5 million. Now, we did a video a couple of days ago on the worst situations in football right now, and the Raiders were definitely one of them, as their supporting cast for whichever quarterback they draft in 2025 is also bad, but the concept also applies to New England, where if they want to go pay Chris Godwin and T. Higgins each north of $20 million per year, because they have over $130 million in cap space, they can afford to do that, or whether they want to bring in Stephon Diggs, whatever the case may be, they can go out and sign big free agents to actually give their quarterback a fighting chance. And what we've seen from Drake so far, to me, considering the circumstances, is nothing short of great expectations for the future. One thing I do want to be clear with not just Drake May, but with any of the quarterbacks in today's video is I don't want to get in a conversation, 7, 8, 10 games into their career and say, well, can they ever be a top 3 or 4 quarterback in the NFL? Because Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, and others are all 29 years old or younger. I don't want to get into that conversation. But what I will say about Drake May is his career right now reminds me a lot of a young Josh Allen's. And in 2018, the leading receivers on the Bills were Zay Jones, Robert Foster, Kelvin Benjamin, Jason Kroom, and LaShawn McCoy, and that's kind of the point as to how bad the 2024 Patriots receiving core is. If Drake is already showing these flashes, which he clearly is, I think he's going to be a great quarterback for a long time, and I definitely think the Patriots have their franchise quarterback of the future. Bo Nix was the 6th quarterback taken in the first 12 picks, and he played like it through the first 2 games of his career. In the first 2 games, Bo completed just 46 of 77 passes for 384 yards, 0 passing touchdowns, and threw 4 interceptions. It was tough for the Broncos through the first few games of the year, and given they committed 5 turnovers in 2 games, I was very concerned with this situation just a couple of games in, because the supporting cast around Bo looked like what you would expect for a number 1 overall pick, not a number 12 overall pick. And I'm sure Broncos fans remember this, but after the first few games, everyone was tweeting Bo Nix stats, and the one that I remember vividly was in his NFL debut against Seattle, where Bo Nix was just 2 of 12 with 2 interceptions on passes thrown over 10 yards from the line of scrimmage in week 1. But since the first 2 games, in which he had 4 total interceptions, Bo has thrown 14 touchdowns to just 2 interceptions, has completed over 67% of his passes, and has looked like a completely different player. He's also led the team in rushing several times and has nearly 300 rushing yards and 4 rushing touchdowns on this season. And since Bo's first 2 weeks, he would be on pace for a 3,500 passing yard, 26 passing touchdown, 4 interception season, along with over 440 rushing yards and 6 rushing touchdowns, and this would be based on his weeks 3 through 11 pace. He is coming off of a magnificent performance against the Falcons, in which he threw for over 300 yards and 4 touchdowns, and if you are not Bo leaving after the Falcons game, I don't know what else to say. Bo has been great over the last 4 games, and he's thrown for 2 touchdowns or more in 3 of the last 4 games, including 2 against the Chiefs, who are of course led by defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo. Like we said with Jaden, I would imagine this is the worst supporting cast Bo will have to deal with for the remainder of his career, as his top 5 leaders in receiving yards are Courtland Sutton, who is fine by the way, Devon Villay, Lil Jordan Humphrey, Javonte Williams, and Josh Reynolds. The Broncos are currently 6-5, and their next 3 games are against the Raiders, the Browns, and Colts, and I don't think it's unreasonable to say this team could be 9-5 through 14 games. Obviously, the defense is great, and I don't want to take anything away from that side of the football, but when I pick winners over the next few weeks, as crazy as this is going to sound, because I don't think anybody would have believed this heading into the season, but I don't think the Raiders and Browns are going to be able to keep up with Denver offensively. Indy may, but I think the defense will take care of business off the bye, but the offensive part is due in large part to Bo Nix. We live in an era where people want results more than ever before, and given that Bo is a 24-year-old rookie, and given that he struggled right out of the gate, people were quick to assume that he couldn't possibly succeed in this situation because of the lack of talent around him, and especially without a great run game, because there's been multiple games where Bo leads the team in rushing. Denver's final 3 games are at the Chargers, at the Bengals, and home against the Chiefs, so they will certainly be tested in those games, but if they can win just one of them, I think there's a real chance they win 10 games and sneak into the playoffs. And there was a point where everyone assumed Jaden Daniels was going to win the Rookie of the Year award, and I get it, but Bo Nix is most definitely in the conversation, and the Broncos look like they have a quarterback for the next several years. Caleb Williams is up, and the first thing we'll do is address the elephant in the room. Yes, the Bears have went from 4-2 to 4-6, and they've had some very Bears losses over the past month. Whether it was the Commanders' Hail Mary, whether it was going out to the desert to get beat by 20 points by the Cardinals, whether it was getting beat on a tipped field goal at the last second against the Packers, which is also a team and arch rival that the Bears haven't beat since 2018. All of those were very Bears losses, but to place the blame solely on Caleb Williams for those losses, and even the Patriots game too, would be ignorant. There's a reason that Shane Waldron was fired, and there's also a reason that when Jackson Smith-Njigba, a player who played under Shane Waldron, was asked about the Bears hiring Shane Waldron, that he was hesitant and there was a lot of doubt when he was asked about Waldron. I also have a lot of concerns with Matt Eberflus and ultimately the ownership as well, and there's a lot of problems in the Bears organization, and it starts with the top down from the McCaskies. What's unfortunate for Bears fans at the moment is they had all summer to get hyped up and to get excited and to buy into the Caleb Williams hype and even their number 9 overall pick in Rome Odunze too, and it was not an exaggeration to say this was the best situation a number 1 overall pick has ever walked into. And if you denied that, or if you said, well, the Bears stink because they're the Bears, I guess technically you would have a point, but the point is DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, Cole Kmet, and even DeAndre Swift, who's not a bad running back by any means, was a great situation for any quarterback to walk into. What's really unfortunate is Caleb has been sacked 41 times over the first 10 games of his career. Whether the quarterback is Caleb Williams, whether it's a superstar, you are not going to succeed getting sacked an average of 4.1 times per game. Now, are all 41 sacks on the offensive line specifically? No, but all 41 sacks aren't on Caleb either, and there's times in games where Caleb doesn't stand a chance. Obviously, Caleb has 3 good receivers to throw the ball to and a good tight end as well, but there's also been a lot that he's had to overcome in his rookie year, mainly 3 big things: the offensive line, the coaching staff, and ownership. And I know there's a lot of Bears fans that can't wait for the McCaskies to sell and for Matt Eberflus to get fired. I think really everybody outside of the Bears organization thought it was a mistake for them to bring back Matt Eberflus and for them to essentially repeat what they did with Justin Fields by keeping Matt Nagy 1 extra year into Justin Fields' rookie year, and they did the same exact thing with Caleb Williams. Nobody would deny how big of a mistake that was, but even through the adversity, I think we've seen a lot from Caleb Williams to suggest that he's going to be a good quarterback in the NFL for quite some time. I really liked what we saw in the final plays of the Green Bay game, and this was after 2 games against the Cardinals and Patriots where he was sacked a combined 15 times. Again, getting sacked 41 times in your first 10 career games is David Carr levels, and if Caleb Williams can battle through this and continue to shine through this, I think he's going to be just fine. If you were not aware, the Bears have the hardest schedule from here on out, as they still have to play the Vikings and Lions twice, who of course each have 8+ wins, and they still have to go to Green Bay and they have to go to San Francisco. And if Caleb Williams can flash through this with what will probably be the worst situation he has at any point in his career, at least in the next couple of years, I'm not going to get into when he's 30+ years old because nobody knows that far down the road, but if he can flash through this, through what's a bad offensive line, through a season where the offensive coordinator already's been fired, and through a season where everybody knows the head coach is gone at season's end, and if Caleb can finish the year with multiple 2+ passing touchdowns games and finish with somewhere around 19 to 22 touchdown passes, given that he's at 9 passing touchdowns now, I'm really going to like the future for Caleb and the Bears. There were 2 other quarterbacks taken in the first round, one who has not played at all in J.J. McCarthy and one who has only played a couple of snaps in Michael Penix. I really think both organizations are doing right by each player and giving them a year to develop, and J.J. was not going to be the opening day starter. I know he hurt his knee in the preseason, but Sam Darnold was always going to be the opening day starter, and that was never a question, and Sam is 8-2 as a starter, so I think things are working out just fine right now in Minnesota. But with the way that organizations are in today's era, and we've seen this with the Colts and Anthony Richardson and how that situation is gone, I really think having a quarterback sit for a year is the right way to go. Now, just because Patrick Mahomes sat for a year does not mean that Michael Penix and JJ McCarthy are going to be Patrick Mahomes, but I think giving them a chance to sit back and learn and go through the motions for a year is the right way to develop a quarterback in today's era, and both quarterbacks are going to be placed in pretty favorable situations for young players, and JJ McCarthy will only be 22 years old in 2025, so I really like the future for both the Falcons and the Vikings. I think Penix will be a really good quarterback, and I liked him a lot coming out of Washington, and I think JJ has a great situation, whether it's with Justin Jefferson, Kevin O'Connell, TJ Hawkinson, you get the point. I think the Vikings are doing everything they can to set JJ McCarthy up for a long, successful NFL career. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, please like and subscribe, as only about 42% of people watching are subscribed, as well as check out The Perfect Gene, and the link is in the pinned comment. Until next time, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.